Yay! Can you hear me in the back? Way back here. Back tables, can you hear me? Yes, good. My name's John Kuhn. I'll be your host and your MC tonight. Welcome to the annual Brass Awards dinner. This is our Brass Cajones night. How many of you have been to one of our dinners, our Brass Cajones dinners before? Can I see your hands? Okay, wonderful. Now, how many of you have not been to one before? Can I see yours? Look around you, folks. Thank you for coming tonight, folks. Super turnout. We thank you for that. All right, we have a number of things on the plate tonight. We're getting a little bit of a late start, partly because we had such a great turnout here tonight, more than we expected, so we had to make some last-minute arrangements for seating. So we're running a little bit behind, but we'll keep things going at a good pace for you. First of all, if there are that many of you here who haven't been to a Brass Cajones Awards dinner before, there are probably a number of people in this audience who've never heard too much about what Brass Roots is and what we're all about. And I'd like to take this opportunity to explain a little bit, for those of you who haven't heard it yet, what Brass Roots is and what we do. Back in 1994, I ran for United States Senate as a Libertarian candidate. And one of the things that we Thank you. I know there are a lot of people in this room who put a lot of effort into that too, and I want to let you know I appreciate that. One of the things we did in '94 in that Senate campaign is we concentrated a great deal on an issue that I know is near and dear to the hearts of a lot of folks in this room, and that's the pro-gun issue. We focused on it hard, and it paid off. And one of the things we did is we put together a rally at the state capitol in Lansing that drew 10,000 people. Okay, it was a big turnout. It was a great thing. And when we finished that campaign up, we didn't win, and there were a lot of things we didn't accomplish that I had hoped to accomplish. But one of the things that we did do is we focused this state's attention on the gun issue. And I thought that was very, very important. And I thought that it was equally important that we find some way to continue to do that. And I asked some of the key people involved in that campaign to come and sit down with me and talk about what we could do to keep the gun issue where it should be, front and center in this state. And we talked about a lot of the problems that we saw with the pro-gun movement as it stood at that time, late 1994, early 95. And we identified some problems. Not that we didn't have some good pro-gun organizations. We did then, and we still do. But we did identify some problems. First and foremost, we saw a problem with a division of resources. In other words, what we saw was an awful lot of pro-gun activists whose resources were being spread out all over the place and never focused on one particular target for one particular goal. We identified that as a problem. Another problem we identified was too much attention on the national anti-gun efforts against us and not enough on the anti-gun policies of our own local governments and state governments, where we felt there had been some serious anti-gun inroads made and they just weren't being addressed, or weren't being addressed as much as they should be. And another area where we identified a problem was we just saw too much pro-gun effort being focused on the legislature and not enough of it being focused on the judicial branch. Because most of you folks in this room probably know the Second Amendment by heart. Some of you, I know quite a few of you, know about Michigan's Constitution and Article 1, Section 6. There may be some people in this room who don't know what that amendment says. So let me just tell you what our own state constitution says about your right to keep and bear arms. And if you care to look it up, it's Article 1, Section 6. And what I'm about to give you is Article 1, Section 6 in its entirety. This is all it says. It says every person has the right to keep and bear arms for the defense of himself and the state. Period. That's it. That's what your state constitution says about your right to keep and bear arms. Now, it doesn't say anything about militias, okay? Now, there are mixed opinions about that. You hear all kinds of debate about that on the national level. No matter where you fall in that argument, Michigan's Constitution says nothing about it. Michigan's Constitution says if you're a person, that applies to most of us, at least those of us not in public office. You have a right to keep and bear arms for the defense of yourself and the state. What does this mean? Is this really so difficult to understand? Every person has the right to keep and bear arms for the defense of himself and the state. Keep and bear. Keep means possess. Bear means carry with you. Doesn't matter if you carry it under your coat, over your coat, in your hand, or whatever. Keep and bear means keep and carry. Okay. So the third problem we identified is not legislation, decisions from the bench. If you could replace our entire state House and our entire state Senate with public office holders of your choice, the most pro-gun people we could find, what could they possibly give us? It's a serious question. What legislation could they possibly give us better than what Article 1, Section 6 already says? If you can think of it, I'd like to know it. I can only think of a slight improvement. I'd take out the words of the state. But that's minor, and I'm a libertarian, so forgive me. So, the last weakness is we're focusing too much on legislators and not enough on judges. Okay, so we don't focus our resources. We concentrate too much on federal, not enough on local and state, and we worry too much about legislation and not enough about judges. Those are the things we identified as problems with the gun movement. So then we sat down and decided, what do we need to do to address these problems? First, let's prioritize these problems and figure out what's the most important. And the first thing we decided is more important than anything else was item 1 on our list. With millions, literally millions of pro-gun activists, I'm not just talking about people who are pro-gun philosophically, millions of pro-gun activists across this country, we are still losing the battle. And the reason we're losing that battle is because those resources are being divided. Now, you're going to hear me make reference to the National Rifle Association a couple times tonight. And nothing I say tonight is meant to be disparaging toward the National Rifle Association. But since everybody is familiar with them, it's convenient to use them as an example, okay? One of the problems the National Rifle Association has to do with campaign finance laws. Because they're a political action committee, their ILA is a political action committee, and because they are subject to the campaign finance laws. Now, one of the consequences of this is that they are limited in the amount of money that they can give to any particular candidate. How much are they limited to? In the case of a federal candidate, they're limited to $5,000 per candidate. That's all they can give in hard money. A lot of you folks in this audience are pretty politically astute, so you'll know what I mean when I say soft money. And you'll know that they can manage to get some more help to the candidates they really want to help, but it still doesn't amount to nearly enough. Not when you consider that the winning federal candidate in my race spent $13 million to get there. Now, what's $5,000 in that pot? This is the problem that we face, first and foremost. So we look for ways to solve the problem. What we come up with, I thought, was pretty unique. And I thought it was worth forming an organization around and worth giving a shot. What we decided was this. We're going to form an organization where we're not a PAC. We're not going to be a political action committee because we don't want to fall into those PAC laws. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to use the First Amendment, the favorite child of the press. We're going to use the First Amendment as our tool. See, those of us who are Second Amendment supporters have known for an awful long time that without the Second Amendment, you don't get a first. It won't last. we decided there was a way to use the First Amendment to protect the Second. The way it works is this. We have a membership, and that membership is composed of highly active pro-gun people who want their gun rights back. That's first and foremost. We need dedicated people who are absolutely committed to the cause of freedom, particularly their right to keep and bear arms. We start with that. Second, we don't take their money and then give it to a political candidate. If we do that, that makes us a PAC. If we're a PAC, we're limited. That means we got to take your money and then split it up and send it in 60 different directions where it gets diluted. Instead, what we do is we ask you to trust us to do our jobs and research state politics, federal politics, local politics, find the anti-gun candidates who are vulnerable, tell you who they are, and ask you to support those candidates' opponents. It's a little bit of a different twist. But what it does is it puts us in the position of not being a PAC. Instead, what we are is the same thing a newspaper is when they endorse a candidate. We are exercising our First Amendment right to share our opinion with our members. And because we never control the money, we're not a PAC. What's the net result? If, and this is what it all hinges on, if our members trust our advice, if they like the concept, if they're committed to defeating anti-gun public office holders, they send their money to the opponents of the targets that we pick. And the result is all of our membership's money goes in one place, instead of being spread all over. It goes in one place. How's it worked? Ask former State Representative James Ryan how it worked. Give yourselves a hand. You did that. It works. It works. We proved it once. It was our first election cycle. We proved it. Now we're in our second election cycle, and we're looking at another target. What are you chuckling about over there, Scott? What we're here to do, what Brass Roots is here to do, is to serve as a lens. This is our sole purpose in existence. We are the lens that concentrates the energy of all the pro-gun activists we can find into one little hot spot that's going to burn out one anti-gun public office holder. And when we get to the point where we have enough resources, we'll focus it on 2 little hot spots, and we'll take out 2 anti-gun office holders, and then 4, and then 8, until they finally get the message. We decided that we're willing to be the bad guys. When the press interviews Brass Roots, we make no apologies whatsoever about who we are and about what we do. We believe that we have a constitutional right to keep and bear arms, and we are going to use our resources to defeat any public office holder who thinks otherwise. Yes, we're the bad guys. So what? We're going to keep doing it until we win. All right, so those of you who've never heard the Brass Roots concept before, there you go. That's what we do. We're the bad guys, and we focus the energy of the pro-gun movement. It's needed. We've used the carrot approach for too long, folks. It's time for the stick, and we're willing to do that. Now we come down, and I know you all are waiting to hear this, because Brass Roots has been spending the last year looking over the recommendations that you've sent us, looking at our current elected office holders around the state, some local, some judicial, some legislative, and weeding down the list of candidates. I can tell you this, we are going to target 1 office holder this year. 1. I can tell you that that office holder is in a swing district, and it's very, very, very close. I can also tell you that that office holder is one of the most vehemently anti-gun people we've had the opportunity to even consider for a target. I can tell you that target's, did I almost say Democrat? No, I couldn't. See, here's the thing, folks. I can't tell you. Here's the thing. We've gotten more sophisticated, which we have to. We've done our research, and we have picked a target. You know what else is going on this weekend? Who knows? Thank you. We have two major party conventions going on this weekend. And we do not want them discussing who Brass Roots picked at their convention where they got all the thinkers in one place. What we want them to do is find out about it after the convention. So, did I almost say Democrat? I almost said Democrat, didn't I? See, Brass Roots, I forgot to mention that we are a nonpartisan organization, too. First target we took out was a Republican. I think we pretty well proved to anybody who had any doubts in this state that we were not a partisan organization when we did that. So I don't think we have to worry about that this year. Let me ask you this. If by some chance we did pick a Democrat, how many of you would love to take out a vehement anti-gun Democrat? How many of you know where AM 1270 is on the radio dial? All right, here's what you do. First of all, there is a letter with your name on it if you're a Brass Roots member in the chute, and it's coming. And when that letter gets there, you're going to know exactly who our target is. But if you want a heads up on it, if you want to know who it's going to be, you tune that radio dial to AM 1270, and you be listening 5 o'clock Monday when I'm on the Mark Scott Show, and we're going to let you know who it is. Right there on Mark Scott Show on AM 1275 o'clock. Right after they're done with their conventions. Now, here's my question for you folks tonight. As of right now, our pledge base stands at $43,000. This is the question. Oh, and by the way, I can tell you this one other thing about our target. Our target is so vehemently anti-gun that this target is one of the top recipients of anti-gun money in the state of Michigan. We ain't hunting lightweights, folks, not this time. We are not hunting lightweights. We need every penny we can get. Now, when I announce on Mark Scott's show Monday at 5 o'clock who this target is, I can announce that we have $43,000 in pledge money. Or I can announce more. And what I'd like to ask you folks tonight, in all honesty, just between us, what do you want me to tell them we have? Any ideas out there? What do you think we can get between now and Monday in our pledge base? This double, the man says. Man says we should tell him $86,000.
Keep them in the dark.
They keep themselves in the dark well enough. Man says $86,000. Any other ideas? How many of you are not Brass Roots pledging members? Can I see a show of hands? Oh man, they're hard now. They're coming up hard. Okay. How many of you are Brass Roots pledging members? How many of you could increase it a little? All right, we're working. We're working. I can see it coming. Mark, what do you think we should tell them? 100,000 something. Never mind, Mark. Forget it. I'm talking to her. Each of you has on your table a form. Here's what we need to do. We need to come up with some money for this target. If you wondered why we're only picking one, it's because this is a heavy hitter, folks. This is a heavy hitter. This one has a lot of anti-gun money. This one is vulnerable. We can take this one out, but we need every bit we can get to do it. And I want to make sure that Brass Roots is batting 1,000 after this election cycle. Do you? Yeah? What I'd like you to do is just take that form and do what you can to increase your pledge. If you haven't made a pledge yet, now would be a really, really, really good time to become a Brass Roots pledging member. Now, what does this mean you have to do? It does not mean you send a check to Brass Roots. It does not mean you give us any money tonight. What it does mean is this. You have to be prepared sometime very, very soon, since the targeting letter is going out right now. We're talking in the next week or 2, 3 weeks at the most. You got to send a check to the opponent of this target. That's what it means. Okay, so when you're writing that number in there, this is what it means. If you already made a pledge, I want you first to honor the pledge you made, then cover your increase. Because these candidates, this opponents, our target's opponents need the money as soon as possible. Okay? Get the first part of your pledge to them, get your increase to them as soon thereafter. If it's the first time you're making a pledge, get it in as quick as possible. But that's what the pledge means. You'll also find a place on there where you can become a contributing member if you'd like, and we really like it. This is how Brass Roots gets its operating money. That's money that you do send directly to us. That's what we use to do things like this, cover our mailing costs and that sort of thing. But the pledge money you send directly to the candidates. So, if you would, each table has a form on it. What I'd like you to do, put your number in there. We'll send some people around to pick them up, and later in the evening when I come up here again, I'll let you know what we'll be announcing on Mark Scott's show for a pledge base. Let's see how close we can get to that. The $100,000 figure. See how close we can get to that one. All right. Do I have anything else to cover here? Yes. I covered pledges. I covered contributing memberships. Our sales table is right over here, folks. This is another thing you can do tonight. How many bow hunters are in the audience? Yeah? Me too. We got some really neat hats over there. All right? We got the lightweight ones with the mesh in the back. We got the ones that are really good on October 15th or so. When the mornings get a bit frosty, they're a little bit insulated. Stop by our table over there. It's something else you can do to help us out with our operating expenses. Buy some merchandise. You bow hunters, check out the hats. They're pretty neat. All right. I better get down from here so we can stay on track. I want to introduce our vice director and membership director. He's an enormously hard worker. This is one of the guys who does a lot of work for this organization, rarely gets recognized for it, but he's definitely one of our mainstays, and he's going to talk about prizes for the drawing tonight and announce our membership contest. Our vice director and membership director, Mr. John Emerson.
Okay. Thanks, John. Just a couple of announcements. First of all, we had more people here than we expected, so we didn't get all the tables set up with the bumper stickers. So if you didn't get your bumper sticker, we got them back there. We'll be happy to get you one. Also, if you were back there, you might have noticed those beautiful firearms that we have on display. We're going to have the drawing for them later on in the program. Tickets are $1 a piece, and if you haven't gotten your tickets yet, we've got some people that can come to your table, or you can get them back there up until the drawing time. They'll be available. The second prize is the 54 caliber black powder rifle. It's got the Brass Roots emblem engraved on the stock. The first prize is the Kimber Classic 45 caliber pistol. It has Ted Nugent's signature engraved on the slide and custom Brass Roots grips. Some of you might have remembered that pistol. We gave it away back at the tax blast in April, and the fellow who won it was extremely generous and donated it back to the organization. He wanted to support the cause, and that was the way he wanted to do it. All you got to do is be 21 and be able to get the green card, your purchase permit, go through that government okay, and you can get the gun. Of course, all the proceeds are going to go to the organization. Now, a lot of you have friends or acquaintances that would be interested in supporting an organization like ours, if only someone would ask them. So this is your opportunity to spread the word about Brass Roots and get a chance to win a really neat prize. Whoever brings in the most new dues-paying members to Brass Roots will win a fine firearm like one of the ones we're giving away tonight. We have membership applications on the tables, or you can use any of our other membership applications. You can photocopy to distribute them. And all you got to do is make sure that your name is on the form as a sponsor so we can can keep track of how many new members you brought in. The contest is going to run for 12 months, and the first prize will be a Brass Roots firearm. Second and third prizes will be an assortment of special Brass Roots merchandise. So get out there, spread the word, and let your friends know what you're doing to support the right to keep and bear arms in Michigan. Thank you.
Thanks, John. John's been doing a great job for us. He's just been an outstanding membership director, and he stepped up to the plate as our vice director. He's wearing two hats and doing a terrific job. I'd like to give John a round of applause for the work he's doing. All right, next person I want to bring up is our executive director. Mike Hoban has been one of the just absolute shining stars that has come aboard Brass Roots since we founded it. You know, Mike wasn't there in the beginning when we first got Brass Roots organized and rolling. Mike was actively, as always, working within the pro-gun movement, but we never found him in the beginning. Mike was one of those guys that was working hard in other areas while Brass Roots was working hard getting started. It's kind of like we just kept getting closer and closer and closer. I kept bumping into him at events and so forth, and one day he said, you know, John, I'd kind of like to help you people out. You know, you got something, looks like you got something pretty good going here. I'd like to be part of it. So one day we invited him to come and just work as a volunteer. Right, like Mike ever just worked as a volunteer for anything in his life. He promptly took the first ball we gave him and dribbled all over the court. Just absolutely did an outstanding job, and ever since then we've been, you know, going to him with virtually everything that we have. And of course it finally got to the point where we said, God, Mike, you're running everything anyway, why don't you run everything, you know? And so we elected him our executive director because it made sense, because he was doing everything, and he's been doing everything ever since. He's been doing it through all kinds of personal challenges. Probably be mad at me for saying so, but Mike was in an accident here a little while back for, you know, a year or so ago, and he's been working through some pretty darn tough health problems, serious health problems that made it very difficult for him to do his job at times. But this man has absolutely stepped up to the plate every single time he was asked, and he's been the best thing that's happened to Brass Roots since we founded it. Mike Hoban is the heart and soul of this organization right now because he's the man that gets things done. And I'd like to bring him up here to carry the program ahead. He's got a couple things he's going to talk about. I hope he's going to talk a little bit about his statewide road trip. This is one of the things that he just did for us. It was absolutely outstanding. He took, while he's had these health problems, I mean, he's had back problems, bad back problems, and he took our plaque on the road to 76 cities. 76 Michigan cities in 29 days. Check out the scrapbook on the table back there of all the places he took that plaque to. As a result of all of Mike's efforts, dragging that plaque all over the state and talking to people, we now have a local chapter in the Upper Peninsula. Brass Roots is now a statewide organization. We got another chapter, folks. And a lot of you folks helped make that happen. I'll tell you what, you know you've got something popular when you send a letter out to your members who are already hard hit for donations. They're hit all the time. I know how it is. You get fundraising letters from everybody. I know how this works. So when you send a fundraising letter out to your members who are as politically active as you folks are, asking them for money to do something, and they send back $10,000 on a 3,000-piece mailing in 3 weeks, you've got something that people believe in. When we asked people to fund this road trip, you came through, and you deserve a round of applause for that. Thank you very much. You and Mike Hoban are the reason we have on Upper Peninsula chapter right now. Mike and Julie, his wife. Yes, Julie, his wife. You ready, Mike? Got to give him a minute. He's got to come clear up from the bar. You got it. The Brass Roots Hub. Mike Homan.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. And I personally want to thank all those members who contributed to that statewide homeless plaque tour. I think I did a lot of good out there. Covered more than 5,000 miles. I also want to thank the board members who did all the planning. That was the toughest part of the trip, was doing the planning. Especially Renee Rochester, if she's out there. She did a lot of stuff for us. Give a hand for Renee Rochester. I'd also like to thank one person that probably made more sacrifice for that trip than anybody else in the room, and that's my wife Julie back in the back there, because she had to do without me for 30 days.
You said that wasn't tough.
It was a tough sacrifice for her. I do have one brief announcement before I get into a few things, and well, I want to make this clear. This is also our annual members meeting. Okay, so I'm going to touch on a couple of things just very briefly before I get into these presentations. First of all, Arlen Afton from Families of Michigan for Concealed Carry is not here tonight. Last week, for personal reasons, she decided to decline the award. It has nothing to do with the Brass Roots organization. It's a very personal choice of hers. But I just want to say that there will be a Brass Cajones Award going out to a woman. There's a lot of real tough women in this movement out there that deserve this award, so don't think she was the only one. How many people here have seen the movie Braveheart? That's what I thought. Happens to be my favorite movie. I want you to think about the last battle scene in that movie. After the Scots had won some battles and they pushed the British back, and they were on that final battleground, they're engaged in very close and intense fighting. And when William Wallace looked back and waved his flag for his backup to come in, his allies, those allies stopped and turned and rode away and left him on the battlefield. You guys remember that scene? You remember the look on his face? Well, I kind of know a little bit about how he feels. What their leaders did was they took titles and land from the king in exchange not to fight, and they basically turned their backs on him and his warriors and left him right there on the battlefield. The Brass Roots organization was in a battle last year, and we had won a lot of battles in the fight for concealed weapons carry in the state of Michigan. And right in mid-battle, just as we had won quite a few of the battles, some of our allies stopped, turned, and left us on the battlefield. They took the best deal they could get from the king instead of keep on fighting. Now the reason I bring this up is because I want you to know that these award winners here tonight are the kind of people that stood on the battlefield with us. They didn't take a compromise deal. They're the kind of people that you can count on. And I want to assure the Brass Roots organization and its members that the Brass Roots organization will never stop to take the best deal that we can get. Okay, we're not out here trying. That's right, somebody just said it, freedom. Freedom is not negotiable, and the Brass Roots organization does not negotiate with tyrants. We're not out here, as my friend General Laney would say, we're not out here to rock the boat, we're out to sink the fleet. Now, as executive director, it's my distinct honor and awesome responsibility in selecting the winners of the Brass Cajones Award. These winners are selected for their achievements under certain criteria. One of the core values that my father taught me when I was growing up was, when you know you're right in your heart about something, you must stick to your guns, stand up for what you believe, no matter what the odds or consequences. He told me this was my duty as a man, as an American, and as a Hoban. These winners all exemplify that credo, that moral, that core. Every winner makes some type of sacrifice. They put themselves at risk politically, personally, or professionally in the battle to restore our right to keep and bear arms. But I just want to repeat something that my friend Mark Scott told me when he won his award. Everyone who stands up for their rights these days puts themselves at risk at some degree. So all of you people out there standing up for your right to keep and bear arms, you all got cojones. Give yourselves a nice round of applause. The inscription on the trophies read, quote, "In recognition of your testicular fortitude in the defense of the right to keep and bear arms." Tonight's first winner is a man who every day for the past 10 years has struggled with a disability. Like Jim Brady, Scott Johnson was the victim of a criminal with a gun. Scott was a private investigator, and while serving papers on a subject on August 19, 1988, he was shot in the back by a coward and a criminal whose only punishment was 1 year of work release. Unlike Jim Brady, Scott doesn't blame the entire population of law-abiding gun owners, gun dealers, or gun manufacturers. He puts the blame where it belongs, on the back-shooting, cowardly maggot that pulled the trigger. Scott is the president of Wheels for Change, and in September and October of 1997, he went to meet with Jim Brady. Jim Brady is a spokesman for the National Organization on Disabilities in Washington, D.C. With the help of his friend Russ Schurter and his ex-wife Janice Johnson, Scott rolled himself over 800 miles to meet with Jim Brady. When he finally got to Washington, D.C. and met with Jim Brady to discuss the problems of the disabled and posed for pictures, Scott proudly and intentionally wore a T-shirt that read, "Michigan Gun Owners." He's got some pictures of it over there, too. Scott's a member of Michigan Gun Owners. He's a Brass Roots member. He's a member of Ted Nugent, United Sportsmen of America, and he volunteers his time to all of them. He believes that it's obscene that law-abiding citizens are punished for the criminal actions of others, while the real criminals go unpunished, and he is very vocal about it. So, ladies and gentlemen, I present a man with brass cojones, Scott Johnson.
First of all, Mike, number one, knowing you and knowing what you've done, we talked about different appointments and disappointments that you found going along doing our trips. I'll tell you what, 836 miles in a wheelchair in 34 days, 9,826 miles overlooking 3 states in 7 counties when I got to the top of that mountain after 14 hours in a quickie GPV wheelchair. I had a lot to consider. I had my real father who died while I was on the road. I had my grandfather that had a quadruple bypass. I had grandmother that was diagnosed with cancer and told that if she woke up tomorrow morning, thank God you're alive. At that point, I called somebody who, number one, taught me a lot of the values that I have today that Mike and I both share. And that is my family and my grandfather. My grandfather said to me, "You're doing what's right. You keep going. You're doing what you want to do. You're doing what's right." I was awarded also a plaque by my family that said it's one thing to dream the impossible dream, but it's another thing to do it. When I wheeled to Washington, D.C., I wheeled there on several issues. The Medicare issue, sitting here looking at all these people, I was looking and testifying in front of 350 congressmen and women. I brought up the fact that there's not $23.3 billion in fraud going on out there. There's over $100 billion in fraud going on out there, and it's not coming out of William Clinton's pocket, okay? It's coming out of my pocket when I worked and your pocket now. And with that thought in mind, I have a man sitting here tonight that knows what I went through when the chicken-hearted SOB that shot me in the back got away with a year's work release. And one thing Mike didn't mention was while he was doing that work release, he was being investigated by the Oakland County Prosecutor's Office for bribing him, and only did a third of the time he was supposed to do for shooting me. And that man, I'd like to say, has been a friend to me. If it wasn't for him, I called him at nights at 2 o'clock in the morning when I said it's over. He called me on August 19th, which was my 10-year anniversary, and he said, "Scott, I never thought that I would be talking to you right now." His name is Bill McHenry. He's my civil defense, or my civil rights, or my civil attorney. He's been my friend. He's been there. He saw me testify in front of a court when a guy did what he did to me. 11 to 14 days after I was shot in the back and was told that I didn't have the right but to have my civil defense attorney, or my civil case attorney, my public defender, or pretender, as I like to call them, because that's exactly what they are. He will be the one, and most of you sitting at this table, TNUSA, have heard this before. I look the devil in the face, and you know where this comes from, and I call him the devil, and I don't back down from him. 4 years after the fact that they were going to bring this guy to a speedy trial, I went in front of the Oakland County Courthouse with a sign that said, "Ask me about justice." Okay? Now I want to bring up the fact of being robbed twice since I've been in this wheelchair. There's a member of you, couple members here tonight that I know that are in wheelchairs. Fortunately enough, I didn't see the first bullet coming. The second time, the guy had the gun cocked right in my face. There was nothing I can do. I've been fighting for my right to get my concealed weapons permit back. I want it back in my possession. I want my Second Amendment rights. And whatever I have to do, including wheel to Washington, D.C., and talk to James Brady about it, that's what I'm going to do. I also have to mention two people that are not here tonight that went with me. His name is Russ Schurter. known as Lonnie Schurter, on his birth certificate, quit his job, and said, Scott, I believe in what you're doing. I'm behind you. He drove 34 days with my chore service dog when he wasn't by my side, Randy, and also my ex-wife Janice, who had back surgery yesterday and could not be here tonight. But I owe a lot to them. There are people that I could never replace or ever say enough for. But when I wheeled, I was told by some people that also helped with my campaign, Karen, you helped on my campaign. Everybody told me, Ted even told me, there's no way that you will make it to the top of the gun control building wearing this shirt, Michigan gun owners, that you'll never make it to the top of that building wearing that shirt. Well, like I said, I looked the devil in the eye and I call him the devil. And I started from the bottom. I came out of a congressional hearing where I testified in front of 350 congressmen, and I took my coat, my sports jacket off, my shirt, my tie, and I put this MGO shirt on. And they asked me, Ted asked me, oh, you did a Superman routine. And I said, no, Ted, there weren't any accessible telephone booths. So I had to do it right in the middle of the street. So that's where I did it. And all I can say is I wheeled from the bottom of that building up that escalator with my free press photojournalist, Gabriel Tate, who gave a lot of his time and believes in me. We went in. I got pictures of the seal on the door of the Gun Control Bureau. I got pictures of Russ, Janice, and I sitting in front of the gun control banner. And then I got the ultimate. I got this. For those of you in the back that can't see it, I apologize. But this is me shaking hands with James Brady wearing my Michigan gun owner shirt. And I was damn proud when I did it. James Brady asked me what my shirt said. And I told him. And I told him why I felt the way I felt. Because as that man right there can attest, Bill McHenry, I have never backed down, and I've always stood a good challenge. In closing, I'd just like to say two things. Number one, after 4 years and this guy got a year's work release, before they would accept this agreement, which was they were going to use the same evidence to prosecute this guy that they did in the first and second trial. It came up a hung jury, and we know that there might have been money there. And yes, I'm here to say it. I'll back it up. And that man also can say the day they brought me a document and said, you have to sign this document stating that you were happy with the way the Oakland County judicial system handled your case. I told him, you tell Dick Thompson to stick it where the sun don't shine, and I hope he gets a paper cut. The second thing I got to say is this, and that is, I will never back down from getting my Second Amendment rights back. I will never back down from somebody who tells me at the Oakland County Judicial Court, you go up there and it says right at the desk, if you're asking for this permit for personal protection, you might as well not even apply. Well, I'll tell you what, let them be in my position and face a gun like I did, and then they can tell me how I felt. And that's all I have to say. And this last thing in closing again, John Coons, Mike Hoban, I didn't know you guys. Dennis, I know you're sitting back there somewhere. And at the time I was leaving, I told everybody I was going to do it. And they all shook their head and said, I don't think it's going to happen, Scott. You'll never make it. Well, I've got the proof, and it'll be in TN USA magazine. And here's another picture for you. This is Sheriff Mack. Okay? He's the man that defeated the Brady bill, some of the portions of it. I was told that I was taking advantage of a person with a disability. And you know what I said? I took no more advantage of him than he did of me when he said that he was going to ban 19 assault rifles, and it turned up being 119, the 100 we never even heard about. Thank you very much.
Glen Williams next. Okay, thank you. You folks that have reserved table signs on your table, you want to flip those over and open them up. There's a little quote in every one of them for you. Just a little bonus for you. Our second winner tonight is a man who I see eye to eye with on a lot of subjects, and that's not just because we're about the same height. Some of you might have noticed that I'm less than 5.5 feet tall. And growing up, I have encountered some bullies. And another thing my dad taught me is how to handle bullies. He told me you invite them outside or into the boys' room, and then you dish out the worst ass whooping they ever had. And if that doesn't work, you get your big brother or you get a bunch of your friends to do the job for you. And by the way, that's why this nose looks like this, and I've had more bridge work than the River Kwai. Only works about half the time. But I never had to run and hide in fear. Our next winner, Glen Williams, has the same attitude. He and I have had long conversations. It's going to be a few yet. I got a lot to say. I got a lot to say about you, friend. Yeah. He takes the same type of attitude. Violate my rights, and I will whoop your ass. Yeah. And make no mistake about it. The situation that we're in, our government and those that would disarm us are bullies, and we are the little guys in this fight. That's why we need to gang up like we do with grassroots. Glen Williams is the executive director of the Michigan Big Game Hunters Association, an organization for the past 16 years has defended the rights of hunters and our gun rights. They offer large rewards for the capture and conviction of murderers of hunters. And I think Glen's going to tell you a thing or two about that. They are solely responsible for putting the animal rights freak, the nut, who firebombed the MSU research lab and destroyed over 50 years of research. They put him behind bars. The Michigan Big Game Hunters have always been there to support grassroots. They're one of the few sportsmen's groups who truly understand the meaning of the Second Amendment, and that is, it is our insurance policy against tyranny. They actually display the Second Amendment in its entirety and Article 1, Section 6 of the Michigan Constitution on their banners right next to their logo. They're one of the only groups who did stay on the battlefield, and they will stay until the fight is won. So for his years of uncompromising dedication, we honor him with this award. Ladies and gentlemen, a man with brass cojones, Glen Williams.
Well, I'm going to make this short. However, I want to say a few things about our Second Amendment. You know, some of you people, it's like I'm really preaching to preaching to the choir, but some of you people wonder, what's the Second Amendment all about? In case some of you people know, the Second Amendment was written for one reason and one reason only. It wasn't written for hunting purposes. It wasn't written for gun collecting or target shooting. It was written and put in the Constitution of the United States so that every citizen in this country could protect themselves against a tyrant government. And do not forget that. We have a president right now that has been nibbling away and taking away our gun rights. And Mr. Gore is right along with him, taking away these gun rights. Now, I have no problem people supporting the people that they believe in. If you believe in Mr. Clinton, and it's worth sacrificing your Second Amendment rights for a few kernels that he flips out there like the Pied Piper, you should vote for him. But I'm going to tell you what, you better watch what you're doing because he's taking away your rights. And once those Second Amendment rights goes, the rest of the Constitution you can throw out the window. Our president stood up in front of the people in this stood up in front of the nation, and he put his right hand, he took an oath, he put his right hand on a bottle of Viagra and said, that was a Freudian slip. He took an oath, and in the oath he said, I will defend, protect, preserve, and uphold the Constitution of the United States. Now, there's a man there taking this oath, but the first thing he wants to do is throw the Second Amendment out the window. Is that a president that you can trust? Now, how do we beat people like this here? It's really very simple. We try to make it very complex how to turn around and protect our Second Amendment rights. It's very simple. First thing, I'm going to back up here again, hold on. We have over 1 million gun owners, or 1 million hunters in this state. We have hundreds of thousands of gun owners in this state. We can control any election in this state and this country. All we have to do is stay on the same track. The first thing I suggest that you do is turn around. You must register to vote. You must turn around, have your family and your friends register to vote. And you must vote for the people that protect our constitutional rights. It is simple and clear as that. The second thing you turn around and do is you turn around and you join the National Rifle Association. Without the National Rifle Association, we would be in deep trouble. Now, you don't have to agree with everything the National Rifle Association does, but if we didn't have it, we'd have a real problem. The next thing to do is turn around and join an organization like Grassroots, like Michigan Big Game.